Hello, everybody. We're going to take a look at our default walk cycles and see how everything went. The way I'm going to do this is to first go through the folder and just look at all the videos one by one and make some general comments. And then I've downloaded all of the files and I can go through certain ones in detail. Mostly if you're here, then I'll go through yours in detail. If for some reason the video doesn't work, then I'll go through the file to make my comments instead. But that'll just be a way to make sure that we get to see everything. So first I'm just going to go through this list real quick, take a look at each of the videos, and make some comments on that. Cool. So this is Devon's. And it looks pretty decent. Cycles 4 times, got the controllers turned off. Cool. I'd say for a first walk cycle, that looks very decent. I'm not seeing any real major problems in the lower body. The arms look just a little bit stiff and they're kind of hitting some extremes. There's a lot of jargon in reviewing animations and talking about the motions, so I'll try to explain what I mean by each one as I start to use them. Flicking is a problem where an object goes rapidly to one side and then rebounds suddenly, and I'm seeing a little bit of flicking in the front swing of the hands. Popping would be another thing that we would be looking for. I'm not really seeing a lot of it, but popping is related to usually joints, so elbows and knees, where suddenly it rapidly bends and so the joint pops out or rapidly straightens. I see a little bit of popping in the arms, not as much in the legs. And hitting invisible walls is usually a typical one, but I'm not really seeing that just yet. So very good. Let's go ahead and look at Miguel's real quick. Very good. Okay. He looks a little bit stiff in both the legs and the arms. And I believe I'm seeing something where like his foot starts to go through the ground like halfway through it. Yeah, there it goes. The left or the right foot starts to sink into the grid for some reason. It also sort of looks in general like he's never really straightening his arms. He's kind of holding them up at about hip level, and his legs are hyperextending a few times. I think maybe there's a cycling problem because it looks different in the first couple of steps from the later ones, but we can take a look at that in a little bit if you'd like.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. I had a big one where my right hand was like it had these extra keyframes for some
Hmm.
reason that I had
Okay.
to get rid of,
Yeah.
and I think that happened to my foot too, right there.
All right. We'll take a look in the file in just a little bit once I go through all the videos. Very good. In general, though, seems to be working out. Elias. Okay. There's a little bit of a hitch that I'm seeing in the back of the foot for each step. It seems to rapidly unfold and then hold and bounce and then come forward. I don't know what's causing that. Probably there's some keyframes that are a little bit too close together or something's happening too quickly. The upper body looks a little bit restrained and stiff, but smooth. The same thing is kind of happening here where the arms are never really extending out straight. They do kind of have to get almost completely straight, at least on the backswing, in order to appear natural. And they are hitting somewhat of a hard wall front and back as they're swinging. Other than that, not too bad. Probably need a little bit more motion in the hips. That's going to be a pretty typical one, is that on the first walk cycle people do, it's very likely that they don't displace the hips enough as in translation, and that tends to make the walk look a little bit stiff. It's easy to underestimate. Okay, Noah, you need to turn off the controllers and you need to cycle it 4 times in order for me to be able to use this for assessment. So right now it's very hard for me to make comments because it's just one cycle and all of those controllers are really distracting. I can kind of see just from that one cycle that the back and upper body looks really stiff. It looks like the chest is not bending or swaying at all, which is going to make it look very robotic. So that'd be the only comment that I can say just from this. We'll have to take a look at the file for that. Paul. A little bit small. You might want to zoom in your camera before you do play best in the future. Generally not bad. There's some odd things happening, mostly in the upper body. I think it's because the upper body is kind of doing almost like a limping kind of cadence. So something is like not symmetrical in the upper body. So it makes it look like he's got some sort of attitude or like he's listening to music or something like that. In addition to that, one other weird thing is that your hands appear to be doing like a motion where they're like pulling a rope backwards. So it's like their fingers open up and then they close and then they travel almost straight back. And so it's like he's pulling himself along on two invisible railings or ropes. Um, those are just kind of general things. I'm sure there's a way to augment that pretty easily. Probably just that your finger poses just need to have a slack position and hold it. But I do appreciate if you're trying to make them fold and unfold. It's just that in this pattern, it starts to look like he's doing some action. All right, Isaac. Okay, so this is a good example of popping that I was talking about earlier. The elbows are popping like crazy. So they're folding and unfolding in a distracting, sudden way. Lower body looks pretty nice and smooth, especially the feet and knees. Hips look like they're moving enough, but they might not be rotating enough. Getting a lot of rotation in the hips is a great way to make it feel a lot more dynamic. I can see the body and shoulders moving, but you need to be a little bit more bold in the rotation of the hips. As far as the arm popping, that's usually just a polish issue that we have to very carefully control the exact positions that the wrists move through space, and maybe even do the animation motion tracking that I demonstrated in order to get rid of that stuff. So if I ignore the arms, then it's looking pretty good. The arms are the biggest issue. Okay. Kayla was having some trouble yesterday. It looks like she went for Beefy instead of Goon. She was on 2019. Are any of you guys on 2019? She was having a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah, I am.
And you're able to open and operate Goon?
Yeah, but it gave a couple of errors and was talking about like importing problems.
Hmm. Okay. Somehow hers manifested in some really bad stuff. So just be careful if that happens. Then you might have to switch to a different character. Just test it. And if it worked for you already, then you're probably good. Okay, so she didn't get very far because that was holding her back. Also, at that point, she was talking to me just yesterday, which means probably started the assignment just yesterday on the due date, which is not a good idea. So that's how far she got. Jesse. Cool, we got another Beefy. That's not bad. The legs are looking pretty good. Same general kind of note where we might need to move the hips just a little bit more. I can kind of see, even without the controllers, that the whole character, I think, is bobbing forward and back, which might be that the graph editor for that circle controller on the ground needed to be smoothed out so that it's a linear motion. I could be wrong, but that's just a guess. A little bit more shoulder and hip rotation would be preferable here. He's a big guy. He's got big shoulders. Very likely we're going to see them rotating. They don't have to lean side to side because that would make it very feminine, but rotating would be a good idea. In general, though, this is working. The only really bad thing that I can see right away is just that the hands look very stiff. I think that you're not rotating the wrist back in the direction of travel to make them appear just a little bit looser. But yeah, in general, pretty strong just as a first walk cycle. Yang. Cool. Yep. Definitely working. The only thing I could say right away is that the torso is stiff. Oh, not going to play a second time? There it goes. Yeah. Arms and legs look really good. Amount of movement in the hips looks really good. Feet look good. The only thing is that the torso is stiff. So we want to get more motion in there. And that is where things can start to feel like they go off the rails and get a little bit out of control, but it's really necessary for the fluidity of the character. So not bad at all. Gunter. Cool. Yeah, I'd say that's a really decent start there. You've got flicking happening in the hands. So suddenly they go whoop, just every now and then. Mostly forward, it looks like. Actually, on the extent of each side. So forward it happens, and at the very back it happens. In the middle, we're pretty good. There is a little bit of a hitch in the feet as well. I see this little jiggle in the back of each step, so there might be like a double keyframe there or something. All right, not too bad though. And Andrew. Okay. Again, pretty decent. We've got a bit of stiffness in the body. I can see motion in there. It's just not enough. It has to be a bit more exaggerated. And a bit of stiffness in the hips as well, which is kind of affecting all of that other stuff. Feet look generally pretty good. I do see a bit of a hitch on the back step of the camera left foot, possibly camera right as well. And then a little bit of flicking in the wrists, kind of like how Gunter had, but just a little bit less extreme. Okay. So there we go. That's our run through of everybody's videos. And so now for the people that are here in chat, I'm going to look through your files to give you some more specific advice and see what's going on. So let me go ahead and open up, let's see who's alphabetic. Yang is going to be first. Yang, how'd this go? I know you've done walk cycles before, but it's probably been a while, huh?
Yeah, it's been like a year or so since I
Okay.
last did a walk cycle.
Well, you seem to have remembered pretty much exactly how to do it, or that or my instruction was good this time. So did it give you any trouble?
Uh, I think the only problem that I had is when I was trying to do the loop to do the play blast
Mm-hmm.
for the first 30 frames. Like if we just do the 30 frames and just loop it the first 30 frames, it
Yeah.
works fine. But when you like add the other frames to like 120 or something, it was like snapping. As you can see, like the left or right arm, I think it's like snapping
Okay, it starts to
weirdly.
introduce errors. Uh,
Yeah,
let's look at that and see if we can figure out exactly what's happened. So, like this arm, for instance, right? Or the other one.
yeah, I think that would be the right arm. See how it's like it's snapping out of place?
Let's see if we look at translates and we zoom out. Sometimes we can find out what's happening just from the graph editor alone. There's a slight change in direction right here, but that's actually in the middle. So right now the translate X appears to cycle smoothly. Translate Y has got a kind of weird action that's happening, but it's not at the cycling point, so we could be fine with that. This one's a bit weird. Okay, so at the very start and end, you've got tangent handles that are pointing beyond their bounds. It ends up being smooth, but it means that this apex of motion is a little bit after the frame, which could cause hiccuping in the motion as well. But I'm not particularly seeing it. Where are you talking about the hitch happening? Is it at the front of the swing, the back, in the middle?
At the back of the string, like he suddenly strays up the arm when he's doing the back motion for the right arm.
Oh, like here.
Like there, yeah. So when you do the play, it to me looks really weird.
Right. Okay, so let me look at the first set to see if that happens. So it didn't quite happen the same way in the first set. But then in the second set, it's more hyperextended, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. Okay. So at 45, and your cycle is 31, we're talking about somewhere right in here, 12, 13 or so. Okay. So the first thing I would check is, do all of our animations loop at the same rate? So we want to see, are there keyframes all lined up here on frame 31? There are. And if there's anything lined up on like 30 or 29 or 32 would have been obvious. These ones right here, they don't seem, yeah, they've got keyframes, I think, on the very next frame. Yeah, this one definitely does. That one, yeah, it looks like it does. So I just want to make sure everything's moving at the same rate because that can cause issues if they're out of sync a little bit. Let's look at, so the two big things that interact here are the position of your body and the position of your IK handle. After that, it's stuff happening within the chest bones or the shoulder itself. So we just want to make sure this one definitely has keys on 31 for all of these. You know what? What's going on there? Okay, yeah, 31, it does. And 31, good. Rotation, rotation, rotation. Okay, so your hip motion's fine. And then the chest bend is also fine. We don't see any keyframes outside. And then the shoulder is also fine. Okay. And then the IK control. Yeah, I don't see any of them having keys outside this range. All right, so the one that stuck out to me is this one, translate Z, where it's going outside the bounds, but it's not really happening at the correct moment to cause a problem. We're talking about this part of the motion right here, and I don't see anything in translate Z that could be affecting that. Nor translate Y, not really. Okay, or not really translate X either. Let's take a look at the hips. Possible, but not likely. So one thing that can happen sometimes is if when you cycled everything, instead of choosing cycle, you chose cycle with offset, that can mess things up. I don't know if you remember, but when you did curves post-infinity, do you know for sure that you chose cycle?
Yeah, I did cycle
Okay.
for everything. Yeah.
So it shouldn't change anything if I just click it again and then play it back. Actually, it did.
It wasn't really that because I really had to just put it to cycle.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't know which one of them was cycling with offset or not. They were at least so close to being the exact same keyframe that I couldn't see a difference. But now that elbow doesn't do that. So I think it was just a simple case of the wrong kind of cycling.
I spent hours trying to figure it out, so I just gave up. I used OES to record my like the 30 frames for the
You know,
play class and photos and play class.
you know what the difference is, right, between cycle and cycle with offset?
Is it like it's snapping? Like trying to do
No.
snap
The
keyframes?
difference is with cycle, it goes back to frame one. With cycle with offset, it adds the motion onto the last frame. So it's like if you rotate, if your animation was rotating forward 5 degrees, cycle would start at 0 and go to 5, and then snap back to 0 and go to 5, and snap back to 0 and go to 5. Offset would go from 0 to 5, and then 5 to 10, and 10 to 15, and 15 to 20. Right? So it repeats the motion, but it adds each time. That kind of makes sense?
Oh, I see. I see.
So here, like if we translate Y, cycle with offset, if you've got the exact same number here, we won't see any difference at all. But if it's slightly different, then it'll start climbing or falling. So no difference, right? But now watch what happens if I change this last value. See how now it's going up at a diagonal angle forever? So if I grab this and I say, instead, let's just cycle, now that small error is going to result in a pop here, but it's never going to wander away, right? That's the big difference. So my guess is on some controller, there's a slight error in the reset position. So the first and last pose are not exactly the same, but they're close enough that we can't tell. And then when we cycle with offset, it starts to multiply and multiply and multiply. Okay?
Okay.
One other big note about yours is that you didn't do the cycling correctly. So the bottom circle is not moving backwards, and the character is not taking real steps forward. So you remember that part of the video where I'm talking about, like, I take the step, I line up the feet, I do it again, and then I move this backwards so that he can cycle in place? You've just animated him walking on a treadmill. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that.
Why?
I don't know. I was watching you video in the background and I just started animating and I just kind of like forgot to do that.
Just didn't want to do it? All right.
No, I started doing it, but then I had some errors. So I had to redo it everything again. So I just started doing it that way.
So the reason I do it my way is to give the feet very solid placement on the ground and a definite speed that the character is moving forward that is linked to something that isn't going to wander. So like when the 2 feet are planted, their relationship between each other is not going to wander away. It's not super useful for just a simple walk, but if you had something like a gorilla that needs to knuckle on its forelimbs and its feet, and sometimes you got 2 feet touching the ground, sometimes you got three, that's when it would really start to show a benefit because you wouldn't have to control the backward sliding motion manually. Um, Another reason that I do it is just generally for the graph editor, whereas for your feet, for Translate Z, we're going to see this repeating cycle over and over and over again. For my version, they would take steps forward forever. So I would have to cycle them with offset, sort of. Since the whole thing resets itself, it doesn't actually matter what I do as long as I copy paste. But it tends to be a little bit easier to polish the feet and the arms. Actually, not the arms, the feet, though, when you're moving physically forward. Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
Also, now that I'm looking inside, it doesn't look like the body's doing anything. The upper body.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's not leaned forward at the waist, and the spine isn't bending and unbending. I'm not seeing any of this. Let's see from the front. I see twist, but maybe not sideways bend. Do you have this motion,
I added a little bit.
side to
It's
side?
not.
I see twist. No, actually you
Did I not
don't.
add it yet?
No,
No.
you only have Y.
Only,
And
only
and
the
actually,
first one.
ooh, you only have Y on one vertebrae too. So we should be able to see it's just this one, the lowest stomach part, or maybe it's just this one. So you got to treat the spine as a unit that moves together because then one by one, each piece rotates a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And if we had clothing on, then it would look much, much smoother. The way you're doing it, one of the pieces is bending and the others aren't. And also the hips aren't really rotating or bobbing. So there's nothing to counteract. So your body is going to appear very stiff.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little robotic. Another thing about just kind of the physical presence of a rig doing a walk is that the faster they're moving, the more they need to lean forward for the entire duration. So a steady walk like this, we could lean forward just a little bit like that, and then counter rotate the spine back, kind of like this, to make a more gentle curve in the body and kind of an elegant walking position. But if this character were running, then we'd want to lean this very far forward. And then it would depend on the kind of character we wanted, whether or not we were going to bend the body this way or this way more extremely as they're doing the broader animation. So be sure to keep that in mind because not just for posture, but for motion, we need that stuff to get a nice fluid looking character.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's look at Miguel because you're the next one on my list. All right, how'd it go, Miguel?
Not bad. I did have a few problems. Like you see the foot thing now, which I don't know how I didn't catch that. I watched it so many times after seeing the hand freak out.
Were you sticking to the first cycle? Because maybe it doesn't happen here; it happens later.
No, I watched the my play blast. Which
Ah, okay. Well, it's an easy thing to miss. It looks like it's going further each time, so you might have a cycle with offset problem also.
oh okay.
Let's find out. Oh, you've
No,
actually
it's
got
some extra frames. Yeah,
yeah, you
I don't
got
know why I
keyframes.
did that.
Okay, so I'm gonna just select everything So if you've got keyframes anywhere beyond this range, now I'll be able to delete them. Okay, so now it's
Oh, there's a
looking
there's a
weird.
stretch.
Yeah. Let's see what happens now. So that first cycle is fine. And then it doesn't seem to reset. So maybe you're not cycling everything. Some things could just not have been told to cycle. So again, I'm just going to grab everything. And in the graph editor, just hit F and encircle all of it. And then just tell it all to cycle without offset. Didn't look like it changed anything, but maybe it did. We'll find out. Okay. Yeah, for some reason, that foot is not resetting itself. So let's find out. This would be in probably these channels over here. So we can try to find out what's happening. Frame 29. Is everything cycling on 29?
Yep,
Okay, good.
or at least it should be.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. Sometimes it's 31, sometimes it's 29, depending on what the person did. So that one's at 29. That one's at 29, but the positions aren't the same. And this is translate Z. Oh, okay, this one makes sense. This is forward to backward. That is what should happen, that it just snaps back. Rotate, okay, rotate, rotate. So now knee twist, knee pull vector, heel roll. So there's a slight discrepancy here, which probably wouldn't be the source of our problem because it is immediately resetting itself.
Oh, I
Oh,
did
but
see the foot
this.
was. Oh, there we go. Extra frames.
How did I miss? Oh, they're so far ahead. They're outside of our range entirely. Oh, wow. Okay. Uh,
So aiming for those is the problem, right?
yeah, okay. So I'm going to grab everything again. And now zoom way out,
Yeah,
I
you can see
guess.
them all right there.
Oh, there they are. Okay. There they are.
Do you have
Oh,
any idea how I did that?
no. Trying to. Let me see. It didn't let me just delete with my keyboard key. Yeah, it's getting rid of like the whole. Okay, so I've got to make the. I'll do this down here. Maybe if you were sliding things around, then you slid them out of range and never saw them again.
Yeah, maybe so, huh?
Okay, so there we go. So now, do you know what the playback range was?
I think you told us to do 113.
Let's see if that works. I get it doesn't really matter if it cycles smoothly in the reset here. I just want to see that it's not doing the thing anymore. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so that's a couple of mysteries solved at least.
Or fixed.
Yeah, fixed at least. Sometimes that's the best you can do. If things happen, it's weird. Okay,
Fair enough.
so now let's look at the animation itself. I was noticing a bit of stiffness. I guess I'm still
Yeah,
seeing it.
I was watching a reference of from like this YouTube site
Mm-hmm.
called Endless Reference,
Yeah.
and yeah, the arms. I don't know. People don't seem to bend their arms that much, but it might just be that the reference is not very good. Maybe the performers were stiff.
Well, there's an aspect to that where we're trying to caricature, and so some of it is that you know what needs to happen, and whether you see it or not, you try to put it in. And just as an animation sort of thing, the arm needs to bend and unbend so that we feel that there's stress and slack. So it's more like treating it like a rope to say that at this point it's relaxed and at this point it's tensed or under stress, right? And it's that kind of aspect that makes it appear more casual as we pass through those phases of like stress and slack. And the same thing is kind of true for the legs. Do they ever really straighten, like hyperextend in the walk? No, they don't. Not on a real person. But we do it anyway to give a feeling of stresses and a feeling of relaxation. So what I'm seeing on your limbs is that they appear to be bent basically the whole time. So his legs never really appear to become straight and stay straight for a while. His arms never really appear to become straight and stay straight for a while. And because of that, it's like he's in a coiled spring kind of attitude, like he's nervous or in some sort of internal pain that he's trying to not let on. It's that sort of thing. The big thing for helping the walk appear a bit more natural, though, would be up and down on the hips, which right now it's just a bit too small.
Yeah, it's only like 1 point of movement.
One unit, like one of these.
Yeah, 1 unit.
Oh, that's way too small. Usually, the amount that we move him in
Or wait, I think
space,
it's 2 actually, because it goes from -1 to +1.
either way, the amount that we move them in space is relevant to how big their head is normally. You want to move them a whole head or a half a head or something like that. The only time we would move them less up and down is if there was a particular character reason. So just to look at the translate y graph, yeah, you've got like negative 1.2. So a very small amount of up and down motion. I would want them to move, I don't know how many it's going to be in units, but enough so that his head displaces. So it looks like this is the apex here. And if I take a look at the top of his head, he moved like maybe from the crown of his head to halfway between the crown and the eyebrows is like that new position. So I'd want that to move like this much, but not in this direction. Obviously, we're going too far off the ground. So it would be more like the down position, which I'm not actually, is this the down position right here? I don't know
No,
if you have
this is the crossover.
I don't think you have a down position. Yeah, you have a contact, but you don't have a down. So contact is supposed to be a relatively neutral one. Then shortly after that, at around 8 or so, we're supposed to go down. Then in the passing, we return to neutral. So, okay, your passing is here at 8. That's fine. And then we go up, and then we go to contact. So yeah, you're actually missing the down pose. Be somewhere in here. And so at that point, we could get a lot more, at least a lot more motion. So the amount of displacement is going to be between down and up. So the up pose probably a little bit higher. The down pose just needs to exist. And now he's probably moving as much as would be appropriate. See, it's about like the level of his eyes almost meets the level of the top of his head. And that's all we're really looking for.
Okay.
That makes sense. So yeah, we were just missing that pose. And so on the second half of the walk, it'd be right about here or so. You want to lower it. And maybe this one, because the leg didn't quite stiffen out, just a little bit up maybe. Could be too much.
Yeah, they used to be like that, and I was getting a lot of popping in the knee.
Yeah, that'll happen. And the way to fix that is more to do with the hips and the knee than with eliminating motion in the torso. So now we've got this happening. Let's see what happens when I play it. Well, now it looks like he's limping. Like, I don't know if did I not do it on the first half? And I thought I did. There it goes. Oh, okay. For some reason I didn't do it here. Maybe I just moved the wrong pose. Thought I did. Anyway, there we go. I'm looking at the graph editor off screen here. There.
Yeah, I thought I saw you nudge this one, but
I thought I did too, but it didn't change. But there we go. Now, like, there's going to be some errors introduced from what I just did, but if you just focus on the hips, it feels a lot more natural now. We're getting that sort of figure 8 motion. And of course, it messed up the head because you were counter animating something that didn't exist at that point. Okay. Let's look at the legs then. So now that I've moved your up pose higher, the leg is straightening longer and it's just kind of bouncing in place, which is pretty typical. We can solve that with the squash and stretch controller. The red one actually is working pretty well. Yeah, so what we're looking for is not just straightening that limb, but straightening it and keeping it straight for a little while. Otherwise, it becomes a pop. So here on 7, that blue, I don't know why I'm on this side, the blue leg is bent significantly. 8, it's almost straight. 9, it's straighter. 10, it's still just about as straight, maybe bending slightly. 11, a bit more. 12, it straightened further. That's sort of a bounce. So we don't want that to happen. We want it to progress in one direction and one direction only. So here on the passing, if we could slow down the amount that this leg is straightening, that would be good. And the way I would do that is by increasing the ball roll just a little bit, just to where I get that back again. So now here it's bent. Here is about the same bend. Here we could reduce it just a little bit to straighten it slightly. And then we're going to watch. That's a hyperextended. That's an almost hyperextended. That's a smooth bend. And that progressed enough that I'm okay with it, but I think this one, I would want to keep it just a little bit straighter, a little bit longer. So I'm going to move the ball roll down. That's okay. And then here, I can move it forward. And then here I could move it forward just a bit. There we go. The only problem with doing it this way is that if these motions that I'm putting on the ball roll are visible, as in the heel starts jiggling up and down, then I can't do it that way. And I've got to solve it with hip rotation or with the height of the hips. But if they're small enough that we don't see them in the foot, and I don't see them in the foot, let's see what the graph editor says. Ball roll. These are all the keys I introduced. There is a potential problem right there, but I don't think it was visible, mostly because the rotation's so small. Let's see, from there to there, it's invisible. I mean, there it is. There's a little dip right there. I can see it when I scrub back. So potentially I wouldn't want to do just that one, but the rest of them would be fine. And I could handle it with stretch. But now if we watch the knee, it's a lot smoother and less jittery in that area.
Oh yeah, that was bothering me so bad.
So that's the polish phase of this, where we've got everything blocked in, we like the gross motion, and now we're just handling things like little errors that are visually making it less pleasant to watch. And this might be good to go, or we might solve this little problem by getting rid of this one and seeing if it makes a difference. And then scrub back and see, like, okay, so it should be right here. It does actually, it makes a pretty big difference on that knee. It looks very unsteady without that keyframe. When it plays back, it's basically invisible, but I think I'd prefer to keep it because the heel didn't look bad at all. Okay. So now up in the arms, we can do a similar kind of thing. With these, it's probably not necessary to put in so many extra keyframes like I just did. It's more like just handling the graph editor and the overall position. So let's see, in the front, I like that position. That's great for a contact. Here, looks reasonable enough. I might push it across the body a little bit more, like this way. Let's see. Then we come down. I think you've traveled a bit too far by this point, that we need to hang out forward a little bit longer so it has time to reverse back. I'm not sure if we've got a missing pose here in the middle. And then back pose, this is the other contact. That looks fine. That looks okay. And then we start traveling forward. So let me look at that first part again. So this, we're reversing, and then as we're traveling back, we want to get a straight arm. I think it's right around here in the middle. We're missing a pose. Yeah, on 12. So on 12, I want to get this to come a little bit further down. Really, it's the forward travel that needs to straighten the arm, though. Okay, then this one comes up. Okay, so on this one, traveling forward, we should have a straighter arm, which is delayed back just a little bit, kind of like this. And the wrist is aiming the wrong way. It should aim that way because it's going forward now. Okay, so backward, it's trailing. Forward, I think maybe you're hitching it too high up in the back here too. So we were just traveling from down to up. Then this one, I think that's a bit too high. Let's bring that down to about here. And this one will delay a little bit further forward and down so that we can still do the same motion. From down to up. Ooh, I really reduced it a lot. Go a little higher.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the reference I was working with was an angry walk, quote unquote.
Oh,
So
that's going to change everything.
without, yeah, exaggerating like the leading with his hands.
Mm-hmm. So then coming forward to here, we're basically resolving exactly the way that we should, and it's going to travel up and down again. So now I've just got it opening out a bit more than I did.
Yeah, that makes him look a lot more neutral already.
Yeah. The big hitching in the back of the swing was characteristic. Yeah, in an angry walk, you're going to tense your body. And so your elbow and knee angles, I guess your knee angles, are not going to be as dynamic. And there's going to be an overall stiffness in the way the character's posture is held. So it's a very different sort of thing, whereas relaxation is almost characteristically loose, right? Relaxation is like more flowing and more moving and less muscle tension. So that helped a little bit. Notice that unlike the legs, the arms you don't really need to hyperextend or get perfectly straight. It's just the difference between this straight or this straight. We just need it to straighten out, not entirely be straight. Because there is no tension on the arm still, and the hand is not heavy enough to like pull the arm straight. Now, if you were carrying something like a heavy briefcase or a bowling bag, maybe, then you might want to straighten the arm a bit. But in this case, he's just kind of walking, so we don't need to do that. Okay. Oh, I never really saw the wrist flip upward, and I think we need to. That would have happened right around here. So at 8, and I think this might have been a pose that we were missing, or maybe that was 12. I want to, okay, angle this forward and up so that we end up getting the drag in the hand. There we go. Now, it's not all traveling fluidly right now because I haven't done anything in the graph editor, but as I play it, it's fluid enough that I would feel more confident starting to work in the graph editor. In fact, I've introduced a hitch by doing that, probably because... What's that?
You say it looks weird now.
Yeah, it does. Probably because I've introduced, a mismatch like this one into the graph editor by moving and posing things, or especially this one. That's a very big mismatch. That one's fine. That's the translate Z direction. Because you've got this one cycling, anything where you see it doing this, this is one where you could do cycle with offset. But that's probably going to introduce animation errors when we loop it, unless your bottom ring is also cycling with offset. So if this one is not offsetting, then those ones can't offset either. But if this one is offsetting, as in getting further and further back in space, then these ones can move further forward and forward in space, and it makes the graph editor a lot easier to understand. So that's something I might recommend that you do. Okay, but guarantee we can fix those positions. I didn't even copy or paste anything, so it's likely that I might have changed this pose and never changed pose 1. Now, they're slightly different, but they're almost identical. So that's likely not the case. It's just going to be the graph editor. Okay? Do you have anything else that you struggled with in particular or wanted me to address?
No, I think I just made the mistake of being kind of resistant to the really exaggerated walk cycle.
Yeah, and that's a growing pain, kind of. What you learn about animating is that even if you want it to look realistic, you have to do bigger than you would see on video. And so there's sort of degrees. There's cartoony, which is crazy, and there's caricatured, which is a little less crazy. And then there's naturalistic, which is a little bit caricatured from reality. Then there's realistic, which is actually itself a little bit caricatured too. You just don't realize it. And then there's like very, very gritty, mocap kind of stuff where it's like 1-to-1 with reality. And so no matter what you do, you're trying to look at what's the person doing in video and go just a little bit farther because this person doesn't look like a real person. So doing that will appear dead and stiff. So always go a little bit wider, a little bit more exaggerated, and then it tends to be easier to tone it down. Okay?
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gunter, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Good. How'd this assignment go for you?
Took me a bit, but I eventually got it.
Okay.
I just follow along
Cool.
step by step.
Feet were looking nice and smooth until I looked from the front. The sideways stuff is popping. This looks good.
Here's the thing.
Mhm.
I thought we were supposed to do character, so
No.
I was making it for. But when the last thing was not to do character, I tried fixing it so it would be less character, and then I forgot to change all the things because I had the feet wider than you had it a little bit.
It's here, and I did talk about it also.
Yeah.
I know.
But then I tried changing it, and now it's fine now.
It is.
Sort of.
I think you've hit the neutral kind of feeling now, and it's not a bad thing that you put more motion into it. It's only bad if you're going for personality. So that's the only thing we want to avoid at this point. But doing more exaggerated motions is not the same as character, and that's perfectly fine. You can definitely do that. Let's look at the visible hiccups that we can see and find out if I can fix those. So in
You're
the
talking about the hands.
the hands and the feet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing I tried fixing, but then I just ended up going.
Okay, here's one. So when I see in the graph editor a motion like this that goes from nothing to almost vertical, I can be pretty sure that there's something wrong. Let's find out though. So usually I'll have my object and my graph editor side by side. I've got two screens, but I want to do it in the recording, so I'm going to try to do it right here. It's lifting off the ground, and then, okay, actually this is the place where it transfers from the internal channels to the external ones, so that's not wrong. That's correct. The part that's maybe messing up a little is that this tangent handle is not aiming in the direction of the new motion, like that. So it's about to go up here and come to a stop, so likely this handle needs to be like this. Same thing for this one. It's a little bit out of sync with how the line is trying to travel. So even though there's this sudden departure, now after the fact it's moving correctly. I don't think that was the source of our hiccup though. Okay, so here it is happening again. And this one, Z, is the forward to backward motion. So let's see if when I scrub through, if it suddenly violently leaves that position. Sort of. So here's what I'm looking at now. If we try to ignore the controllers and just look at the character, because that's all we're going to see in the end, then I'm going to be tracking like his toes and his heel and stuff like that. And so here's his foot coming up off the ground, and his heel suddenly jumped this far away. So what needed to happen is that the spacing that was happening needs to be maintained. He can't move that far in one frame unless he's going to move about this far in the very next frame, which he doesn't, and he's kind of going in the wrong direction now. So that's probably what's contributing to this hiccup, is that the motion isn't smoothly maintained. It's sort of doing something violent but then not following it up.
I actually didn't notice that hiccup at all.
Yeah, this is kind of a hard one to conceptualize, but if you think about just the flesh,
Making the thing because I heard in the video you said to have it in front of where the toe was, and also you
Well,
could
for
add
mine,
more.
that was correct. For yours, it might not be. Like when I was doing my animation pass, it was right for me, but we can't do the exact same thing all the time. So one way I could try to fix this is on this frame where I'm still not moving the diamond. I could increase the amount of toe roll here to be closer in line to the heel position here. See how that's a smaller change now?
Okay.
Oh, what happened? There, I'm going to unbend. Oh, I'm on the wrong frame. That's why. Okay, so we're going to go forward, back. I'm going to increase toe roll a bit more. So now the curve of the foot is reversing, but the overall position of the foot isn't changing all that much.
I think I see the problem of where I messed up. I was supposed to increase the roll not only on the frame where it changes, but also on the other frame as well, and I didn't.
I was just checking to make sure this is moving properly. So I'm also seeing it still kind of jittering around in space right in this area, which leads me to believe that there is either a translate Y problem, doesn't look like it, or a translate Z problem, and it does look like there's kind of a bounce here in translate Z. So as I'm watching this, I'm seeing it sort of bouncing around in space right at this point, and I can see in the graph editor there is a key here that doesn't seem to kind of be in line with this overall motion. So I'm going to delete that key and see if that helps. Yeah, that helped. So now it's just traveling straight from one position to another. It didn't really need that extra point to work properly, and so now it's been smoothed a little bit. Let's look side to side because I did notice that earlier. I'm not sure. This could just be a tangent issue. So let's look at translate X. Okay, so in translate X, there's this moment where it just holds completely steady here, probably where we're transferring, and then it goes off, comes back down. None of that's really bad. Maybe we want to do this a little bit. But it is holding flat a lot, which is kind of suspicious. Okay, yeah, it's here again. So between the moment where it's no longer moving with the diamond and right after, they're not really lined up. So at this point here, we need to get that rotation and position matched up. So here's where the toe is on the ground, the flesh part, and here's where it is now that I've rotated a little bit, so I'm going to move it over. There we go. That's going to help a bit. Yeah. And then I would start looking at the channel and go, whoa, okay, I've really messed up this tangent. So I've got to maybe just set it back to default at first. And now that looks nice and smooth. Let's see if that plays. There we go. So it's just in the handing off between the diamond controller doing everything and this motion. Now look at this. His foot is kind of jittering on the ground back and forth.
That was the mistake I was trying to tell you about.
Okay.
Because I fixed the endpoints at where they were, but I forgot to do the in-betweens. So
Okay.
Because I was making his feet wider apart than normal.
Well, that one's no big deal. Like, that's an easy enough one to handle. We just got to get rid of this big plateau here and make sure that it's nice and flat and straight. So what I would likely do is just grab this point here and copy that number, paste it on this one, and then delete these two. Flat. So now, goes through the air, sits down flat. Picks up, goes through the air, sits down flat. So that one's an easy one.
Yeah, that was the mistake I was talking to you about.
Okay.
Before.
I was seeing jittering, so I wasn't even aware of that happening. I was just seeing the jittering as it picked up through the air.
I didn't notice the jittering at all.
It's something you got to really train your eye to look for. Just sort of inconsistencies or like slightly flickery motions.
I mean, I noticed that my legs were like wiggly all the time. Like,
Yeah.
and I do not know how to get rid of that.
It starts with that. It starts with making sure the feet are doing the right thing, and then that the hips are doing the right thing, and then somewhere in between, you can start to minutely adjust things just to make sure that the knees are working. I'll typically do it in the order that I want the hips to work first, I want the feet to work second, and then the knees third. Kind of in order of like how much flesh are they moving. The hips are moving the entire upper body. They're very important, right? And they affect all these other motions. So kind of just ignore the lower body, pay attention just to the hips. Then the feet are very obvious, points of contact on the ground. You're definitely going to be able to see them, so I want to make sure they work. The knees are something almost nobody's going to pay attention to, but if they flicker and bend and pop, then they'll create a sort of subconscious effect that people will feel but not consciously think about. Cool. Let's look at the flick happening in the wrist also.
Yeah.
I think it could just be tangent handles.
It starts with the blue hand, and then I just copied the motion for the right hand.
Okay, so they're both doing the same thing. So if we solve it for the blue, then we're gonna solve it for both, kind of.
Because as you can see in the outliner, I saved those two that path thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
That's how I was able to mimic for the other hand by using that path.
Now, that can be good if you want to guarantee a symmetrical walk. I tend to find that it's better to just not do that and to have a slightly asymmetrical walk that looks more natural. Almost nobody is perfectly symmetrical like human beings. And so if you animate it slightly differently where he puts one hand slightly in front of the other or swings it slightly further away from the body, that's just...
Well, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. It's
okay.
Just sort of.
So you didn't copy paste? You didn't just like...
No copy pasting.
Oh.
I just literally moved everything to somewhat be in,
like visually? Like this?
Visually.
Oh, okay, that's fine. No, that's okay. I thought you meant like you either copied numbers or copied
no. I did not copy paste. No.
Okay. Well, that's fine.
Did not do that.
I tend to, sometimes I won't even do that. Like I won't even try to look visually and match it. And I'll just try to use my intuition. That results in a slightly crazier kind of asymmetry, but I like that. And I feel like it gives it a little bit more, humanity. But it is a little harder to clean up. But yeah, what you're doing is fine then. So let's see if we can catch the flicking. So there's a little weird, you can see like the wrist suddenly tucks in right here, and I think it's going to be Z. So if I enable the rotation, so Z is doing something kind of out of line with the rest of the animation right at that point.
Oh, yeah, I did that one on purpose.
Well, whether or not you did that one on purpose, the other ones need to lead into it. Because right now, this one is completely ignoring that new position. So I'm going to delete that point so that we can gradually come into that position. And that's going to help. See that?
Oh, yeah.
So now it just smoothly moves around the hip. So now out here, this one I would say is probably not good to go either because we just came from this tuck position and now we're out immediately. It's a little too fast. This one could be out a little bit, but this one should probably be gone so that we have a smoother transition again.
Okay.
So the thing is, like when we do our blocking, right, we just hit S and we put a key on everything. But as you start to get into the motion and analyze it, you can find that you don't need all these keyframes. Like we don't really need this one either. It's not helping to describe this motion. It's just sort of riding along it. So we could delete that. Now I lost a little bit there, and I would have to scale out this handle to make up for it. But now it's exactly the same as it was before. Or if it ain't fixed, don't broke it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We could just leave that there because it's not causing an issue. Okay, this one is causing a very slight issue. where we want to lead into that next motion. And we want this one to lead into the next motion. Just like that, just to smooth that out a little bit. So let's watch. So that would have been the side-to-side rotation. So that's the, or palm and top of the hand rotation. I haven't messed with the translates yet. Let's look at those. Okay. So this one is away from the body and towards the body.
Okay, how did that happen?
What? Did you
It-
see the
the
problem?
hand passed through the leg.
Well, I just started deleting things and moving things around, so, I mean, it could have been me. So I'm looking at away and towards the body. What do we want to happen? Here it's crossing and then coming back. So somewhere in here, we need it to either be higher up or further away from the center of the body so that that doesn't happen. I think, though, passing backwards, we do tend to get pretty close to the hips. I'd probably go just a little bit further, and then it's a little bit too much behind the body, I feel. So I'm going to reduce that just a little bit. But you do have that wrist overlap, so I don't want to get rid of that entirely. And now this one should definitely start to pull away. Yeah, it's still a bit too exaggerated, really, but that'll do for now. I'll ignore the fact that it's going through the leg just till we look at the other channels. Let's look at up and down. So translate Y. Wow. Okay, those handles are going crazy. Right away,
I'm not quite sure how that happened.
I'm just going to set them back to default to start off with, just to see. Okay.
Probably because I was trying to, during my fixing, I was trying to make sure that the elbow is, the hand is never straight.
But it can be straight. It's okay for it to be straight. This one right here is the weirdest one. So high up in the back of the body. I think it needs to be a little bit less crazy. See, right here, now I'm back in line with your existing curve, so that'll probably help. Okay, it does straighten out. Traveling forward, it's pretty likely that we drop a bit in terms of Y. Higher. This one's traveling back, so it can be much more bent. This one could be a bit higher and further forward. As we're traveling backward, since the elbow bends forward, you can fold up the arm a bit more. And when you're traveling forward, we can straighten it a bit more. So this one, I think I would leave it back and up. Then that one's nice and straight. And then it comes to the place where it can fold up. There it goes, fold up. And then I don't want it to straighten too quickly. So this one, probably a bit higher and further forward also. So it folds up, stays folded, and the upper arm starts to move back, stays relatively folded, and then somewhere here it should straighten out, probably this one. Straighten out. Straighten it out a bit more. There we go. All right, let me see how that plays. It's still a bit stiff, but I think it's moving more smoothly now. Mostly the pop that I'm seeing is in wrist position, or sorry, wrist rotation, not wrist position. If I just ignore the hand and follow the diamond, it doesn't really look like it's popping too much except for right here at the front. So it's a little hard sometimes to kind of differentiate between what is something moving and what is something rotating something else that appears to be moving. That didn't help. Let's see. I think it's kind of this. This is the, oh, sorry, this is X. I was looking at the wrong channel. Okay. And Z. Z is the hardest one to reckon because it's resetting. It's kind of this position right here, from here to there, and then has how it comes away, it seems a bit stiff. I think it's possibly Z, that this could travel forward a little bit further. No, I'm not sure. But it's something in there. It's right in this motion, right that area. Well, there is a big spike in Y. Yeah, there's a very big spike in Y that is not really softened at all. So we could soften that by pushing this up further so that we've got longer to come back down. This one is doing a very bouncy kind of motion. I see why though, because it's kind of lining up with the walk. Okay, that's not too bad. Yeah, I think it's mostly the rotation now, kind of fooling my eye. So for those, see which one. Okay, Y is the one that would be responsible for flicking the thumb upward. That's probably going to be the one. I do see some weird stuff happening in here. Let me reset it to defaults and see. Okay, that didn't do anything, so probably need to solve some of these tangent handles a bit. Possibly like this. Maybe by getting rid of that one. Maybe this one. Okay, so let's see. What do we get? You might have a gimbal lock issue. Good.
Gimbal lock?
So gimbal lock is when the rotations don't agree with each other and they start to do weird things. Here's how we solve it. I'm just going to grab all 3 rotation channels for your hand, select, and then go to Curves Euler Filter. Nothing changed, so it's saying no, we don't have a gimbal lock problem. The reason I say is because when we go from here to here, this rotation is very odd. It might just be that we need to repose it because this hand should be delaying. It should be dragging back from where it came from, and it wasn't. So here it arrived, and now it should drag and aim back where it came from. This one also, yeah, I think maybe just the wrist rotations were not great. This one should still be relatively neutral, maybe out this way now, because that's the new direction we're going. Actually, not very much. Now we're starting to move back. That's definitely too much. Forward to backward. Now it's basically caught up. Now it's dragging. This one should also drag. Just a bit. This. I think we were rotating that way as well. And then by this point, the wrist should still be down a bit before it hits the extreme. Then I could copy this position, paste it, and I'm going to have to translate it back. Oop, wrong way. There we go. And this one, although it's good for it to be rotated up here, it should not have hit its extreme yet. That would happen here. Let's delay it a little bit. Okay, so maybe. So I've still got a little bit of a snap there, but it looks a bit more naturalistic now. I'm just trying to aim the hand back in the direction of travel, so towards where it just was, to kind of get a smoother motion. But I'm doing it kind of ad hoc because I just kind of realized a lot of these poses didn't work. So working through it, each position. And then if I see any more hiccups, I try to come through and see, can I eliminate some of these keyframes to make it move more smoothly? Are there tangent handle problems like this one is a tangent handle problem? There we go. Maybe these are unnecessary for this particular part of the motion. This one's doing something weird. Not really sure why. etc., etc. We just keep trying to do that. Try this. Getting closer. I think that one should go away. Yeah. Okay. This one I just messed with. This one's very, very messy. This is the side-to-side rotation in the wrist. And it's likely because I just did a lot of weird stuff to it. So there's a couple here where I think that one might need to go. Or, no, it's more likely this one needs to conform to that previous one. So we'll go up a little bit higher. I'm looking over here to see if I can get the flow right. Kind of like that. But something in here might have to go away. At least I don't think I need that. Yeah, let's get rid of those two. Oh no! These two. There, that's a lot better. I was just creating some mess in there. It's still a little bit sudden and a little bit violent, but this is more along the lines of what I'd be looking for in a polishing phase. Now, we can see how much looser your animation still looks from some of the others, but it's not inappropriately loose. It's just more expressive. Okay. Does that kind of process make sense to you as I'm like crawling through it bit by bit?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really what animation polish is all about, is going through very slowly and watching it sort of in slow motion with your mind on the idea of how is it changing over time, and is anything happening that I don't want to happen, or do I need to make more stuff happen? It's very hard to describe, but I'm sort of just thinking through time as I'm watching this thing travel along real slow like that. And with the graph editor as a reference, if I see a bump or a weird line in the graph editor, then I look particularly at that point to see, is this a problem or not? And if it's not, then just move on. Okay? Cool. All right, you guys. So that is everyone who's present at the moment, except for Nathan. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you, Tabor?
Very good. Did you happen to do my assignment even though you don't have to?
Oh, snap. I'm still in the rigging phase. Would you like to see the character I'm trying to rig?
Sure.
Okay, hold on. Let me load Maya quickly.
Okay. We are starting in, by the way, you guys, on our rigging of a full character. So that's beginning this week. Module. It is going to be a multi-part assignment. So we're starting with the skeleton and the mesh. The mesh that I refer to is available in your handouts folder. Samples and resources. It is in character meshes here. I do have all the TF2 player models in here for the future, in case you want to look at them. But it's this one right here, Proletariat Guy model. This is just a default mesh. I show how to fix it up as the first step of our homework. But begin from that, and we're going to create the entire skeleton this week, name it all, and then in next week we're going to start creating the controllers. All right, so you're going to show us your cool thing?
I don't know about cool, but it's something.
Okay, you're going to show us your something?
Yeah.
Go for it. Let's see.
I still have to fix a bunch of things because apparently that what we're gonna do for this game.
Yeah.
His eyes. He's gonna have eyelids.
Yeah.
I have to figure that part out. But yeah, so far this is what we got.
Do you want the eyelids to be 3D?
Yeah, it's gonna be 3D.
Then just have a hemisphere that's like cut in half and just rotate it from center to close and open the eyelids.
I was thinking of doing that, but I wasn't sure if it would look nice.
It will look like how Muppets look.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I wanted to try to see if I can make it more natural, but if I can't, then I'll just do the Muppet style, which is okay with me.
Well, for this guy, I think that would be natural because he's got big globular eyes sticking off his head. So I would strongly recommend that way because it's going to probably look the best.
All right, I'll definitely do that.
Yep. And if you want a slight more transition between like his head and his eyes, when the eyelids are open, just have them sit just visible here on the top or the bottom, and it creates sort of a skin fold that transitions the eyes from the scalp.
Oh, okay, that's a cool idea.
Cool. So what's this for?
Uh, how I was gonna do like every 2 weeks I make a project.
Yeah.
So I decided I'll just do one big project, and it would be and that way I can have better stuff for 3D models and all that.
Mhm.
I think it would be nicer to have a portfolio where like, hey, I made a game, and this game has a bunch of 3D models that I've made.
Yeah.
And it just looks nicer.
Makes sense to me. Very good. All right, so you're going to put him in a game. What is he going to do in the game?
I can't spoil that yet.
Oh, I just mean like along the lines of platforming or, you know.
He's gonna be an NPC in the game, so he just interacts with you.
So he'll stand there and talk.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Very good.
Yeah, that's about it. Oh, and the mouth thing right here. It was remember that what you were showing me? I'm not sure how long ago it was.
Mm-hmm.
But like how to change different mouths for like a 2D mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was playing it around with that in Unity, and I was able to get it working.
Nice.
So that I can show it in Maya. It doesn't work in Maya for some reason.
Okay. Does it not work just because the textures aren't there?
Not only that, but I think the way I had to set it up in Maya is different in Unity. Because I did the Maya method in Unity, but in my end it didn't work for some reason. So I did. It's hard to explain, but
yeah,
I think it does work. I just had to set it up the Maya version instead of how Unity wants it to be set up.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can think of ways to do it in either system that are slightly different, but it always just boils down to show one of them, hide the rest.
Okay.
So
I got a question, Tabor.
Yeah.
Do you know a way to make it easier instead of like one by one doing a keyframe of each part of the mouth, or that's the way it has to go?
I know how to set up like a channel that will show one of the mouths while hiding the rest. Is that what you? Yeah, like a set-driven key.
Something like that, because I'm trying to wonder like.
Let me show you then.
Okay, I'll let you show it to me.
I'll create a sphere, and then for our demonstration, I'll create just like the letters ABC or something. We'll just do, and these will be our 3 meshes. And I don't want any thickness to them, but I guess it doesn't matter. I haven't looked at the tight mesh stuff in a while. Whatever. These 3 meshes, it'll be fine. So I'm gonna mesh separate. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and let's do delete by type history. Scale all these down. And just pretend that those are mouths.
All right.
Yeah. Let's unparent them too. Unparent. So I'm going to place them all where they need to go. So like right in front of this sphere. Here, here, and here. I'm going to center everything's pivot. Delete everything's history one more time just in case I missed something. And then I'm going to place all of them as children of the sphere, just so like when we animate the sphere, they follow, and name them. So this is the A shape, B shape, and C shape. I noticed I also didn't freeze transformation, so let's do that. Uh-oh. Why'd that do that? Oh, there we go. That was really weird. Okay, so anyway, here's our setup. So I'm going to make a channel on the head, edit, add attribute, and this is going to be, we'll just call it mouth. And because I've only got these 3 choices, I can make this an enum and actually name these choices if I wanted to. If I don't know how many mouths I'm going to have, I might just leave it as like an integer. So you select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. But an enum is going to be a nicer thing. I'm going to call this A, B, and C. So A, B, and C. So this will end up just being like a drop-down list with those 3 things in there. I'm going to add that. So here's how we'll animate that. Just click and choose one. Or you can actually scrub through them, I think. Oh, no, you can't scrub through them. Oh, yeah, you can. With middle mouse, you can. All right, so that is going to drive the visibility of these other 3 things. So we go into animation, key, set driven key, set, and we load the sphere as the driver, and we load the 3 shapes as the driven. And what we want to affect is visibility. So right now, the mouth is set to A, so A should be visible. It is. B and C should be not visible. Key. Now, B should be visible. A and C should not be visible. Key. C should be visible. B and A should not be visible. Key. So now all I have to do to pick my mouth shape to change this. And the right ones are turned on and off automatically. Yeah, like that. So now I've got one channel to animate instead of however many for however many shapes. That kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that definitely is gonna make a lot of things easier because I was expecting me to like to go back and forth to the outliner
Yeah.
and just like disabling and turning everything on.
Which sucks.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so this is, and the great thing is it's a one-time setup for however many options you've got. Doesn't matter.
I got a question. Is it possible because you know like the face sliders in some of the advanced rigs?
Yeah.
Is it possible to connect the enum to like a slider? Or not really?
Not an enum. Yes, it is, but I mean, it's an enum, so a slider doesn't really make sense contextually. But yeah, we can do that. So if I do like a NURBS circle, and I'll just sit this like above the face and treat it like a slider. 90, let's make it smaller, like this. I'll start it like, I don't know where I'm starting it, like here. Modify, freeze, transformations, delete by type, history. And then we'd probably want a line also. So like curve tool. I don't even know which one I'm using at this point. Want to hop into this view. And I'm just going to snap. Is that a complete line? Is that one that I can actually see? Looks like I can see it. It does look weird though. Maybe I picked the one where you had to do one more. Oh well. So I'm just going to treat that as like, here's the distance that we're traveling, right?
Right.
And then I make this, when it's in this position, choose this. When it's in this position, choose this, etc. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, something like that.
So yes, except what happens in between those positions? The answer is nothing,
Oh, okay. I
right?
got
Because it's an enum. It's either A or B or C. It can't be A and B unless you want it to somehow be A and B.
you. No, that makes sense. I see why it works more with deformers because like there's a between at least with those, but
Yeah.
when it comes to something that I'm trying to achieve or what you're trying to achieve right now, it's not really possible.
Well, let's look at this situation instead then, where this is my mouth now, right? And I've got this shape, and I want it to blend between this shape and another mouth shape. And the way I achieve that other mouth shape is by massaging these around. That we can blend, right? So we can blend between this shape and that shape because they have the same number of vertexes. And then we could add another one. And now we're doing blend shapes where we could do whatever we want with this. We could make them big and small. We could change their shape entirely. And no matter which shapes we have, we can always find a way to get to the middle position between them. Is that more like what you're looking for?
Sadly, no. I'm mostly gonna stick with the original one with the enums because
Yeah.
I kind of want it to be more hand drawn.
Yeah. And if you want a smooth transition between hand-drawn shapes, draw the in-betweens and put them in there. But it just means you're going to have to set them 1, 2, 3. At that point, maybe a slider does make sense, where you've got, here's my A position and my B position, but I've also got in-betweens for A plus 1, A plus 2, then B. And I don't ever really need to set those or think about them, but now a slider maybe makes sense. Does that kind of make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
That definitely explains a lot, Tabor. Thank you.
Cool. No problem. Blant. All right, you guys. Anything you want to ask questions about, have me explain, etc.? If not, then we are at an end.
All good here.
All good?
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good for now.
All right, you guys. Thank you very much. Take a look at the video as soon as possible. This stage is not particularly hard, but it would be good to figure out if you're going to have any issues as early as possible so I can help you solve them. If not, then I will see you guys on Friday.
See ya.
All right, see y'all then.
Bye-bye.